the other legend in Michigan, Stephen Bratic. And I've been tracking his progress. He's been involved in lots of different things over the years. His latest thing that he's involved in is he's got chargers, EV chargers, and they don't plug into the grid. He uses various forms of gas. I'll let him explain that. And then the new wrinkle, he just sent me text message here. The new wrinkle is you've got a mobile platform now for EV charging. Why don't you fill in all the details that, I just gave the Cliff's Notes version there. Give us all the details, Steve.
Thanks, Mike. Matt, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
So EV Charging Pod is the name of the company, and we are an on-grid and off-grid solution provider for EV charging. So just recently released our mobile charging unit. So we have a vehicle that runs on propane, as well as a reciprocating engine on the back of this truck with up to 180 kilowatt DC fast charger on it, and I can charge up to 22 vehicles and be mobile. In addition to that, I've got a trailered version, and this was originally designed for some utilities, and just because of the fact that they were actually transitioning to their fleet, specifically electric vehicles, and of course it doesn't look good when the utility is maybe stuck on the side of the road because they ran out of power. So we actually developed these mobile systems so they can actually deploy them either on the road for mobile roadside assistance, and or if they go to a construction site, they can bring the charging system so they can charge their commercial vehicles. Because a lot of times when you're going to their construction site, they're using various tools or equipment that they'll plug into that electric vehicle for power. And so that's just going to eat up the actual vehicle's power consumption. So this helps to kind of mitigate that risk.
So they're mobile EV charging stations, and what is the power source for them? Is it fossil fuels? Is it solar? Is it could it be all of the above?
It would be propane only, but we're looking at at least for the reciprocating engine, but the vehicle and the reciprocating engine both run the same tank of propane. Okay. Down the road, we're hoping that we'll be able to get more vehicle charging capability, one based on switching that vehicle over to an electric vehicle, and then putting the reciprocating engine on the back of it, and then still having a mobile charging system. And we also have a trailered version of the same, so you can just tow it around with any type of vehicle.
And you also have stationary where you can use natural gas. You plug into that, right? If I got that correct?
That's correct. So it could be a stationary system. That's what the pod stands for, an EV charging pod. So it's a reciprocating engine that could use natural gas, renewable natural gas for areas that require that, as well as propane as in addition to in more or less remote areas like up north or into Upper Peninsula, as well as anywhere else in the United States. But we're definitely being very progressive. We're trying to think of all of the variables of what we can do to help mitigate everybody's risk and concern about buying electric vehicles in that progression. So even having discussions, at least more recently, sending communication about this equipment to Michigan Department of Transportation would be, I think, a good start to progress forward and hopefully look at next opportunities to take the concerns that everybody are having with if they're driving the vehicle, they don't want to be caught on the road and losing power.
I've read a lot of stories lately that the EV, shall we say, craze is kind of subdued a little bit now, mostly over range anxiety, and the fact that the infrastructure just isn't there. Right. So that's why a lot of hybrids now are real hot. That seems to be the big selling thing, because then if you lose your electricity, as it were, you run out of the battery, then you can still use gasoline to cover you while you get to the next charging point. So how does, I mean, you were saying you're talking to the state Department of Transportation,
Yeah.
and I mean, they really want to make Michigan the poster child for the EV industry. Are they interested in working with you on something like this?
Well, more recently, I just sent that communication to them about this technology. So we're just waiting for them to deploy that internally throughout all the different departments and have some further discussions. But we've had discussions with the DNR as well, and other municipalities, and they seem to be interested because it's the discussion is it's the chicken or the egg. People aren't buying cars because there isn't enough chargers. People aren't putting in more chargers because there's not enough power currently. So this helps to kind of mitigate a lot of those variables.
Right. And I know the state has talked about grants to establish an EV corridor that would essentially follow I-94 across the state from Detroit to Chicago. But an awful lot of people in Michigan like to go farther north than that. And I would be a little bit worried about that if I had a car with, 400 miles range and I was driving 250 miles to Traverse City. And where am I going to plug the thing in when I get there? Right.
Well, that's a good point. And with that being said, there's a federal program called the NEVI program, NEVI, as part of the National Infrastructure Bill to upgrade the infrastructure and put 4 charging ports every 50 miles on every interstate highway in the United States. So we're only in the first phase right now. So that's very, very progressive. It's going to be coming down the road. It's going to take time because obviously we need power to support that. But those are the things we're doing in various states. We're having discussions about distributed power. We're talking to utilities about how we can, help support them, even if it's temporary. So we're just, that's a very difficult conversation for an organization that is used to being the source of power, and now realizing with EV charging, it's really going to put a huge impact on the grid and strain on the grid. So we're coming up with different ways to kind of mitigate that, even if it's just battery, where we're charging the batteries at night to use for daytime use to charge the vehicles, as just another way to mitigate the strain on the grid when everyone else is using it as well.
Sure. And we had a guest on, Mike, was it last week or the week before, was talking about problems with the reliability of EV charging stations.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. How are you addressing that issue?
So those are a lot of the older chargers. A lot of these components inside of it are outdated. They're not capable of even 4G because they're so old, or they're just not working because of that lack of communication or even the screen. So ultimately, there are some programs out there that are federally driven that are pushing to work on maintaining them and trying to repair them if they're repairable. And if not, the goal is to remove them and replace them with current updated chargers.
Yeah, I think that was Skill Fusion, if I recall the name. Lena Farnsworth's involved with that, and a bunch of other folks. And again, they want to be the maintenance. You may already be an electrician, but do you know how to fix a charging station? Or maybe that's what you want to get the basic course on how to fix it, even if you're not an electrician. But yeah, that's what they're behind. And I didn't realize that until they came on the show that would be an issue. But of course it would be, right?
Yeah. Some of these chargers are at the early stages of vehicles. Plus, the ports might not be compatible to current, connectors in the newer vehicles. So and then because of that, the strain on that grid isn't as bad because the chargers are really, really, really slow. I mean, it could take you, up to 30 hours to maybe even charge a vehicle to the 80% mark because of how slow it is and because the technology is so old.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it. With people, accustomed to getting in and out of a gas station in a couple of minutes.
And that's another thing too, is we have the capability now. The technology is out there. We can go all the way up to 480 kilowatts, which gives us a 6-minute charging time. So we have that, but that all takes time and it takes money as well. So
And I know one of the things you were talking to is some of the ports, because when these ships come in from overseas with the EVs in them, because of the various ship fires we've had here over the last couple of years, they don't come in with much of a charge, and then they can't really, they can drive them off the ship, but that's about it, right? So, have you had any luck in that area?
Well, that's what the EV charge, the mobile EV charging system really supports as well, is being able to deploy that vehicle at the Port Authority. We were working with one of the OEM manufacturers in developing an opportunity to help mitigate that, so we can charge at the port and not have to do all this infrastructure upgrade. So it's something they could do relatively quickly. So we're still in negotiations or discussions with them right now to see about progression in that area.
Okay, how do you address the issue that people are saying, well, you have an EV, but you're charging it with fossil fuels? What's what's your response to that kind of issue?
So actually, the with propane as a minimum, it's being recognized even by the EPA as a processed fuel. So that is actually better than using natural gas. In addition to that, renewable natural gas is the best way to go. But of course, you're going to pay more for that fuel. And the renewable natural gas is basically taking methane, for example, from the waste dumps or from a farm and processing it, being able to put that into the pipeline and then making sure it meets those guidelines. And then ultimately, the end user is buying those credits. And then, that's how it's being recognized.
And I suppose if solar panels become a whole lot more efficient in the future, they're not quite there yet, that would be the optimal way to go, right? Of course, then you have the issue of, is the sun out? Is it cloudy? Then what? You have a wind turbine or something? I mean, I understand what everybody wants to do, but I don't know how practical it is for this particular application, right?
Yeah, I mean, solar is a great technology. And unfortunately, there's with EV chargers, it uses a lot of power, especially DC fast chargers. And then you need to have battery. So then the paybacks for such a project, could be exorbitant, and then at that point, could ultimately kill a project because it's just going to take too long for being able to get a reasonable payback.
Okay, so you've got people all interested in this technology. Tell us where to go to find more information.
Sure. You can go to www.evchargingpod.energy for more information. You can schedule a meeting with me or anyone else on our team on the website, as well as you can put in an inquiry for any project size or any information. All of our data sheets are online, and we'd love to have an opportunity to further discuss how we can help anybody out.